Hello, I'm Denise Galoni. Welcome to today's episode of Empowering You. My guest today is Lawrence DeVincent. He is a George Romero historian and collector. And you've probably never met anyone like Larry before that loves George Romero. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. My guest today is Lawrence DeVincent. He's a George Romero collector and historian. What is a George Romero historian, you may ask? Well, you're going to find out because he's going to give us all types of information that you never knew. Welcome, Larry.
Hi, how are you, Denise?
I'm great. Thank you for being here.
Oh, no problem. I love George Romero and his films and all films in general, but let's talk about George.
Let's talk about George first, because I see that you have in the background there one of our favorites, but we'll get to that. So first, I mentioned that you're a George Romero historian.
Sure.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, I started getting into George through Dawn of the Dead back there, back when it came out on video in 1983, and sort of captured my imagination. Not because of the blood and guts or gore or anything like that. I sort of really got a kick out of seeing people take over a mall and live in it. And it was really exciting in that way. And that's what really got me hooked into it. And then I got to see all those other movies all through the years. And then I started really getting into them and researching them and collecting things from them for the past 20 years. So that makes me sort of an expert on collectibles from the films. And I have a huge, huge collection. And I share this collection on various Blu-rays and stuff like that, where they have still galleries of all different collectibles and materials from the films.
Right. So for anyone that doesn't know who George Romero is, and of course I'm in Pittsburgh. You're not in Pittsburgh, but I'm in Pittsburgh. And there's a strong Pittsburgh connection with George Romero.
Absolutely. I mean, George was born in the Bronx in New York, but then when he went to college, he came out to Pittsburgh to the Carnegie
Carnegie Mellon.
It became Carnegie Mellon. Before that, it was Carnegie Tech, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And that's where he went to college, and then he moved there from that point on, and he made most of his major films there and lived there for a very, very long time. And he's very much associated with Pittsburgh, just like another Pittsburgh legend, Fred Rogers.
Right. And I say Pittsburgh's a zombie capital of the world.
It certainly is. I mean, the modern zombie was born there in Night of the Living Dead in 1968. Before that, zombies were sort of a Haitian sort of maybe there was like a mad witch doctor or something that put a spell on people and created sort of zombies, but they didn't eat flesh, and they weren't like the George Romero zombie from 1968's Night of the Living Dead, where he made them flesh eaters. And that is what the current zombie is known as all over the world, as a flesh eater, and that comes from George Romero and Night of the Living Dead.
And there would be no Walking Dead, which is a huge phenomenon without George Romero.
Exactly, because The Walking Dead follows the same rules of zombies, that George created in Night of the Living Dead, where they are flesh eaters, and the only way to kill them is to shoot them in the brain or kill the brain.
So Dawn of the Dead is what got you into George Romero. And I think I share with you, that's one of my favorite George Romero movies as well, because I grew up and shopped in that mall all the time when I was young. Since these zombies take it over to where we sat in the brown derby and watched people skating was just amazing. And I think that's when I fell in love with George Romero as well. So when I say that you research movies, you really research movies. I mean, I've gone on several of your tours, and it's just amazing the detail that you come up with these movies. How did you? I know that I love movies, but I would never think to do all this research and talk about your tour at Monroeville Mall that you do for Living Dead. First of all, let's talk about Living Dead Weekend. That's where I met you. What is Living Dead Weekend?
Sure. The Living Dead Weekend is a convention held in Pittsburgh in Monroeville, where Dawn of the Dead was filmed, and it's held in Evans City, where Night of the Living Dead is filmed. And that has been taken place there in the area since 2015. And as you know, a horror convention consists of celebrities from the movies, vendors who sell horror memorabilia or movie memorabilia, all types of different things. And sometimes they have film location tours. And I do the film location tours for Living Dead Weekend since 2015. I'm the only person that does them. Not many people could do what I do because they haven't done the research that I have. And the reason why I did that research was that back in the day, actually 19 years ago at this point, Dawn of the Dead was released in an Ultimate Edition black box set. And it had a tour of the mall on there and was filmed by Greg Nicotero, who is famous from The Walking Dead.
Another Pittsburgh connection.
Yeah, another Pittsburgher. And Ken Foree, he hosted the tour. And he was showing people around the mall. And, sometimes he would remember where things happened. Sometimes he didn't, and some fans, super fans would tell him, oh, this happened over there or this happened over there. But it was really interesting to see a tour of the mall. And I hadn't thought, after enjoying the movie for so many years, that you could go to a place like that and that it still existed, a film location like a mall or anything like that. I just hadn't thought of film locations like that or going to them. So that intrigued me. And I thought, one day I want to go to the mall and I want to go on a tour. Hopefully I can go on a tour. I hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right.
Then I decided to, through several trips of going up there to Pittsburgh, I wanted to know more about the mall. And I wanted to maybe, even if there were no tours and there were none, maybe I would be able to figure out where things happened. And what I did was I would compare the movie and a mall directory from the time of its filming, and I would make all these notes on a pad or a piece of paper and say, this happened in front of this store, this happened in front of this store. And then I would compare the old directory to a current mall directory, and I would, coordinate them together so I could figure out where everything happened in modern day, with the current store that's there. So I figured out where every important scene could possibly take place. And I know it, and I've researched it, and I've gone over and over and over again to make sure that I had the correct information, because I don't want to give out bad information. And I eventually became sort of an expert on the mall, and I host the tours that I actually wanted to go on, which is just a weird thing.
And they're fabulous tours.
You.
And what amazes me is because people love movies, but the people that come to these Living Dead weekends, especially Monroeville Mall, because that's where the movie took place, are from all over the world. I've met people from all over the world there, and it's just fascinating to me. And the detail that you give, Larry, that you say, look at this pillar, see this marking. This is the same marking in the film. It's just amazing to me.
Well, the amazing part about it, is that, of course, it's a mall, a working mall that has operated for the past 60 years or so.
Right.
And it's undergone a lot of changes, renovation. Sure. They have to update it periodically over the years. So the mall has changed a lot, and you really need somebody who has done the research and can find out where each thing took place and then tell people where it took place, and then also find little details that still match, like, oh, that pattern on the marble column matches this shot in the movie. And then that proves and sort of gives me a veracity. I know what I'm talking about. Right. And I have points of interest that prove it.
Right. So for people that haven't seen Dawn of the Dead, because there are people that may not like horror movies.
Sure.
And I know the answer to this, but people out there watching may not. How did they film this movie in a working mall? Because the mall was working at the time; it wasn't closed. So how did they film this movie?
Actually, it's a little bit simpler than you think. They would mostly film at nighttime when the mall was closed. So what they would do would be, as the evening went on, and they're going to close about 9 or whatever it might be, they would start getting ready. The crew. They would start putting zombie makeups on. They would get things set up as much as they could. And then when the mall closed, then they could start putting out lights and all the things that they would need for filming. And then they might start filming about midnight, and they would have a good 7 hours or so before the mall music came back on. And then they could not film anymore because that would interfere with their takes. Unless they filmed without sound, maybe they could squeeze another hour in, and then they would have to clean up all their mess and leave the mall open for mall walkers who actually came to the mall. Older people who needed exercise would walk around the mall, and then the stores would open. So they would film all through the night.
How long did it take to film the movie? Do you know?
Yeah, they started in the end of November 1977, and they concluded in early February 1978.
Oh,
So
okay.
it took a little over 2.5 months or so, but they also had about a 2 week break for Christmas and New Year's in the middle of that.
Okay. So the Living Dead in Monroeville just happened a few months ago. That was in June. I guess more
Yes.
than a few months ago. We're in September already. It's more than a few months ago. And that's where you did that tour. But there's also Living Dead weekend that occurs in Evans City. Now, why Evans City? For someone that doesn't know.
Sure. Well, of course, the reason we have the Living Dead Weekend Monroeville is because Dawn of the Dead was filmed at the Monroeville Mall. So we have it in the mall. So that all works out really well.
Right.
And then the reason we have a show in Evans City, PA is because that's where the original Night of the Living Dead was filmed back in 1967, released in 1968. So again, I have film location tours up there where I take fans through the cemetery. I take them onto the farmhouse property, which is private property, and you can't go there normally. I take fans to the sort of road opening scene shots, from the movie. I give you everything you could possibly want to go to up in Evans City where they filmed the movie. And then also we have the celebrities appear there, and then we've arranged to rent out the chapel that's in the
Mm.
cemetery. It's a little building there. And this coming Living Dead weekend, on the Sunday of the event, we are having a brunch there inside the chapel. And then I go on and give a tour from there after, and we have some of the celebrities appearing there for photo ops too, from their favorite, the scenes in the movie where, say, Johnny and Barbara appeared in the cemetery. They're going to be there doing photographs with fans after the brunch.
Right. And I don't think people realize Night of the Living Dead when it was filmed so long ago. It was filmed pretty low budget, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, these days you can make a film on a very, very low budget with a phone or whatnot, a digital camera. And back then it was a low budget, but they did have a decent amount of money because they had worked in commercials locally, George Romero and his
Right.
companion film crew. They did commercials, so they had a lot of equipment. So they weren't low budget in that way, where they didn't know what they were doing necessarily. They had a lot of expertise and equipment, but it was their first film, and it cost around $120,000, which at the time still a good amount of money, but
Right.
not very much either.
Right. 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 And is it true a lot of the people in the movie were people that George and John knew?
Oh, absolutely. The funny thing is, a lot of the zombies were business associates, people from, like I said, the commercial world. They would have their accountant and their accountant's wife as zombies. They would have other business associates. They had turned to other sort of people who did commercials locally, people that formed Hardman and Associates, which then became Hardman Eastman Associates. That included Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman, and they became Harry and Helen Cooper in the movie. So they knew a lot of people, and those people were in the movie. People who worked on the movie were in the movie. It was a really a close knit thing, and it really created something special.
It really, and well, of course, how many years later we're still talking about it?
Yeah, 55 years later this year, and
It,
the Living Dead Weekend Evans City is the 55th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead show, and we are having all the living cast members from Night of the Living Dead appear there at the event.
and that is in October. Do you have the dates for that? I don't have the
Sure,
dates.
sure. It's October 20th through the 22nd. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday in October.
Okay. And there are celebrities from the movie, original cast members that will be there, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Uh, Russ Striner, who played Johnny in
Mhm.
opening scenes, Judy O'Day, who played Barbara in the opening scenes, and then of course we have Judy, uh, who was played by Judith Striner, or at the time it was Judy Ridley, and then we have all the other zombies that we could find,
Mhm.
so on and so forth, and we have as many people as we can get. But again, it's a 55-year-old movie, and those people could have been 20 or 30 or even 40 at the time. So they are getting up there, and there aren't that many people left, honestly. But there are enough to make it really cool. And I highly suggest anybody that's a fan of the movie and movie history, horror movie history, go to the event and meet these people.
Right. So we're talking about George Romero and his zombie movies, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. But he's done so many movies also that people may not realize.
Sure, sure. I mean, one of my favorites also besides the zombie films is Creepshow, which is an anthology horror film written by Stephen King. Stephen King stars in one of the segments.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great, fun film, and it's like a comic book come to life. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, again, filmed in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh location.
Yes, all of George's films from Night of the Living Dead on up to The Dark Half, which came out in 1993, were all filmed in Pittsburgh.
So I know that you've met George Romero many times.
Yeah.
So what would surprise people about George Romero since you were friendly and you met him a few times?
Well, a lot
Was
of
he
people would be
quiet on
shocked.
the set? Was he someone that gave a lot of direction on the set?
Well, number one, when people meet him, if they don't know him or know of him, they are shocked because he's very tall. He's about 6'5" when he was, still with us. He passed away a
Yes.
few years ago in 2017. But he's also, by all accounts, he was very friendly, more a sort of laissez-faire director. Not that he didn't care, but he would
Mhm.
let actors do what he hired them to do. He would give them minimal direction and let them, do what an actor does. And sometimes people appreciate that, sometimes people don't. But uh, his sort of operation or way he did things was more of like a family sort of atmosphere where everybody was friendly and you want to do things for him because he was very friendly with you and very nice and you would want to please him. So he had a really nice tight knit crew that worked in Pittsburgh with him on most of those films, and it shows that he was able to make some really great films when he got that crew together.
Because they've been in a number of films. When you watch some of his films, you're like, oh, there's so and so, and there's so and so.
Right, right, exactly.
So that just
The
shows.
actors, I mean, the crew members,
Mhm.
felt like a part of a family, and then he would meet actors, and they would feel part of the family, and then they would do multiple movies with him over and over. And directors were sort of like that. If they enjoyed the performances or enjoyed the people, the actors that they worked with, they would have them work on multiple movies and things again.
So that shows your love of being a historian for the George Romero films, and now collector. Now I know you're a huge collector
Yep.
of movie memorabilia. What got you started collecting it? Like I can see appreciating it, but why collect it all?
Sure. I think it stems from me. A lot of people, you have to have that mentality, sort of a collector mentality. Before I even started collecting George Romero memorabilia about 20 years ago, I had always kept everything that I bought. I value the things that I buy. I mean, I have my Transformers when I was a kid in the early 80s.
Oh,
I still have them. I collected comic books from 1985 to the year 2000, and I have every one of them, about 20,000 comic books. I keep the things that I buy and I enjoy these things. And I just had that sort of collector mentality. And I became a horror fan really early in life, even before Dawn of the Dead, which I saw in 1983. I had already seen lots of blood and gore from Friday the 13th movies and so on and so forth. But I started going to horror conventions in 1990 and I just sort of became a collector of first autographs and Transformers and toys and comic books, and then it kept progressing to different things. And then my focus became George Romero more than ever in 2004 after the first time that I met him at a convention because he was really impressive. And the people he worked with, the cast members from his movies were impressive too because they were very down to earth people, really nice people. And I can't say there's a bad one among them. Honestly, George is the nicest guy ever. He shocked me when I met him. He was so normal and nice and unpretentious that it made me even more of a fan. And that's when I really began my collecting in earnest in 2004 after I met him. He was so impressive and so nice.
I know it's going to have a hard time answering this question probably. It's almost like which one's your favorite children, but what's your favorite piece that you've collected?
Oh, wow.
I know. I should have given you weeks to think about this question,
No,
huh?
no, no, it's all right. I have a lot of stuff, and I post these things on Facebook and social media and so forth. And like I said, in special features from a lot of the Blu-rays for George's movies in the past decade, you can see a lot of photos from things in my collection.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to pick one, it would have to be a prop, I think, because I do own props also, original items that were used in the filming of these movies.
Right.
And if I'm going to say two. I have
Okay.
two items from Creepshow. Okay, they are props from Creepshow. One is a wheelchair from the first segment in the movie called Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan Grantham gets killed sitting in that very wheelchair, and then his son Richard sits in it also in the segment. It's all through the background of the segment, the wheelchair. I bought it from one of the crew members, the late Nick Tallow, affectionately known as Bomba. He passed away last year, Nick Tallow, and my second item that I have to mention is the Buddha, also from Creepshow. There's something to tide you over segment has a Buddha in Leslie Nielsen's apartment or home. And again, Nick Tallow had this, and I bought it from his family, his estate, after he passed away last December. And these are really, really majorly cool items, and I love them. And they're props from the movies from a George Romero movie that I love. So they're really, really important to me.
Right. So, and you do a lot of times you'll put these for different things for sale when you're on Facebook.
Well,
other things.
I sell posters and things, and I
right.
do sell a lot on Facebook because I'll do an upgrade. Say I'll get a poster for Creepshow, an advanced one sheet, and I got it like 10 years ago. But it might have a bunch of blemishes, might be a rip on the side or something, and then I'll get another one at a good price, and I'll keep the better poster, and then I'll sell the older one that might have had a rip or something, or just any kind of blemish that I don't like. So I'm always upgrading. And then if I see a good deal, I'll get that too, and then I'll sell it. But a lot of times it's upgrades. I'll see a better condition poster and I'll get that, and then I'll sell the old one.
Mm-hmm. And you also put things together. I got this piece from you just recently.
Yes, I do all sorts of little displays, tributes to the movie. I do light boxes with film cells. I do all kinds of little projects because I used to be a horror convention vendor, and it's in my blood. I like to create these little things and sell them. I'm used to doing it. I don't sell at conventions anymore, except for Living Dead Weekend. But I'm always creating little things and putting them out there for people to enjoy because I do enjoy these films and I know them very well. And then I got to make some money too to pay for my bad habit of collecting. I never stop collecting.
Right. You have to. So we have Living Dead Weekend coming up in October. So what's next?
Sure. Like you said, you can check out our website, www.thelivingdeadweekend.com. That always has our dates for our shows and has a banner on top that says October 20th to the 22nd this year for Evans City. And then our next Monroeville show at the Monroeville Mall from Dawn of the Dead is next June 7th through the 9th. That date has already been announced. So save the date, everybody, and keep abreast of things on social media, in the Living Dead Weekend group, or on the website too. We're out there.
Is there anything, Larry, some holy grail that you want to get your hands on that you haven't found yet?
Oh boy, that's a good question too. Well, my holy grail. A lot of people call
it. If price wasn't an object.
Or the people call it, collectors like me call it the Grail prop. The one you want more than anything. That honestly, it would be the crate from Creepshow. From the segment called The Crate. A friend of mine owns the Hero one that was owned by George Romero for many, many, many years after the movie was filmed. And he owns it, and I've seen it. I've taken pictures with it. And that is the one that I would really, really love. But I think if it ever went for sale, if he sold it, felt like selling it, it would go for a lot of money, more money than I could pay.
Right.
So I've sort of made myself happy. I've placated that, that yearning. I have a replica of the crate that looks pretty good. It's not exact, but it's very, very, very good. It's in my living room right now, right over there.
So is there anything, other projects that you're working on? I know that you look at a lot of films and you do some research. Anything that you're working on right now?
I'm not working on anything in particular. Just once in a while, I'll watch a movie and I'll say, "Oh, that's interesting. I could see the numbers on that house, and I know maybe it was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina." So then I'll just put it on pause and say, "Okay, I see a house number. I'll just type in, 3432." street, Wilmington, North Carolina, and then I'll begin my research and I'll look at all the streets that have that sort of house number, and then I'll go on Google Street Views and I'll look at, you know, a live view of the street and see if I can match a house or a location. And that's how I've done and found a lot of locations where, you know, just find little details, or, you know, listen to a commentary on a DVD or Blu-ray, and you can find details of like a person who lived at a house or owned a business or what the business name was. And you can find these records on the internet and you can find out where these things took place. And that happens to me all the time. That's I don't have anything currently going on like that, but it happens. You know, that's how I find things.
Right. Any final thoughts for the audience?
No, I think if you are into George Romero films, you should attend a Living Dead Weekend event. I mean, you know, they are pretty cool with all the celebrities there, the film location tours. And it's very interesting to see these places that still exist if you're a fan. Right.
Because I attend a couple of Living Dead weekends in the past, and I did your Monroeville Mall tour.
Yes, thank you for
a 3-hour tour, a lot of walking.
It is a 3-hour tour. Yep.
A lot of walking. But you take people in things that you can't see in the mall. Like, I would never be able to get behind the mall in some of these staircases and stairwells, other things. So it's really, if you're a fan of the movie or just a fan of movies in general, I mean, it's certainly worth that tour to see all that, and you point things out where things used to be, and it was a great tour. I really, really enjoyed it. Then at Evans City, I did the tour last year at the cemetery. And I have my picture next to the headstone, just like Barbara in the movie. So I'm hoping to get an upgrade this time. But
we need to get a picture together there.
We keep missing that. We have to do that. We have to do that.
We will.
So I really recommend it, because even more of a tour, it's more of a documentary that you're doing, because you're explaining all these things. So it's really enjoyable, and I want to thank you for putting all that time and effort in. And I'm waiting for you to write a book. I keep saying that. You need to write a book.
I know I need to do it, and I want to, and I will one day. I'll be writing several books on George Romero. I promise you, it's going to happen. It has to happen.
It has to happen.
And it doesn't make any sense to me either to have all these collectibles, you know, and have them not be seen, you know, and not talk about them. So I want them to be seen. I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about these movies. I have a passion for them, as people can see. I really do. You know, when you meet me and I talk about these things, I got a passion. I can't. So I'm going to put it in the world. I want people to see my collectibles. I want them to be documented. I want the information that I have to be documented. And it's going to happen. I promise.
It's going to happen. Great.
Hey, let me tell you one more thing. You asked me, is there anything else I want to say? There is. If there's anything you want to do in life, anyone, not just me, not just you, but anyone, do it. Do it. It can be done. Like I said in my story earlier, I dreamed of going on a mall tour one day, and then I eventually became the person that did the tours. So anything can happen. I never wanted to do tours. I am not a totally, you know, extroverted person or anything like that. I'm more of an introvert, honestly. Right. But I do these tours, and I have no problem doing them because I love the subject matter. I love these films, and I love that mall. It's a real interesting place. A little bit jealous that you grew up there and you went to the mall all the time. But as I said, if there's anything in life you want to do, you can do it. Just do it. Go for it. Put in the time. Put in some effort. You know, it can happen. Don't ever be, discouraged. Anything can happen.
Right. And that's a great way to end the interview. And the reason why I had you on the show, Empowering You, is it's empowering. You're doing what you love.
Yes, I am. And I never expected it. Like I said, I never expected anything like this. I never wanted to do tours, or I never thought I would do a tour or anything like this. And it's just happened. And I'm doing all these things that I enjoy. That my hobby has become something much more than a hobby, and it's become a huge part of my life. And it's really enjoyable and fun. And it's not so much like a job or anything, even though it is at times and it can feel like that. But it's fun. It's really, really fun.
Well, I will see you in October.
Okay.
It's cemetery, right?
Yep.
Thanks so much, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank my guest, Lawrence DeVincent, for sharing his love and knowledge of George Romero and some of his films. He gave great information about George Romero, the history, the connection to Pittsburgh, and all things that he loves. He especially had a great message: do what you love, and it won't be work. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.